crime is so gross all you could do was shake your head? When I was 14, I started noticing how differently my parents treated my older brother Peter compared to me. Peter was born with cerebral palsy, which meant he walked with crutches, and his speech was sometimes hard to understand. But he was brilliant and funny and the best big brother anyone could ask for. My parents didn't see it that way though. It started with small comments at dinner. My dad would watch Peter struggle to cut his meat and shake his head saying things about how disappointed he was. My mom would sigh dramatically whenever Peter took too long getting ready for school. They'd compare him to other boys his age talking about sports, and girlfriends like Peter wasn't even sitting right there at the table with us. The comments got meaner over time. When Peter got accepted into the honors program at school, my parents barely acknowledged it. But when I made the volleyball team, they threw a party and invited the whole neighborhood. My dad started calling Peter weak in front of his friends when they came over. My mom would apologize to people for having to look at him like he was something shameful. I tried to make up for it by spending more time with Peter. We'd stay up late playing video games in his room where he could beat anyone at Street Fighter even with his hand tremors. He taught me calculus when I was struggling and helped me write my essays. But I could see their words were getting to him because he stopped smiling as much and spent more time alone. Things escalated when Peter turned 18. My parents told him he was an embarrassment to the family name, and they wished they'd had a normal son instead. They said no woman would ever want him, and he'd never be able to provide for a family. My dad actually used the words genetic dead end, which made me so angry I threw my glass against the wall. They sent me to my room for that. The worst night happened during Peter's high school graduation party. All our relatives were there, and Peter had just given the valedictorian speech at his ceremony. Instead of being proud, my parents spent the whole party making jokes about how he'd never get a real job or move out. My dad loudly told my uncle that Peter would be a burden forever, and they were already looking into homes to put him in. Peter heard everything from the kitchen where he was getting cake. I saw his face crumble as he stood there holding his plate and listening to our father call him worthless. He dropped the cake and locked himself in his room. I banged on his door begging him to let me in, but he wouldn't answer. I could hear him crying through the door, and it broke my heart. That night, I made a decision. I'd been recording my parents on my phone for weeks because I knew something was really wrong with how they were acting. I had videos of them saying horrible things to Peter and audio of them discussing how to get him declared incompetent so they could control his disability benefits. I had proof of emotional abuse that had been going on for years. The next morning, I took everything to my school counselor, Mrs. Perez. She listened to the recordings with tears in her eyes and immediately called Child Protective Services. By lunchtime, there were social workers at our house interviewing all of us separately. Peter finally told them everything about how our parents had been treating him, including things I didn't even know about. It turned out my parents had been stealing Peter's disability checks and using them for vacations while telling him he was too expensive to support. They'd been intercepting his college acceptance letters and throwing them away so he wouldn't leave home. The investigation uncovered years of financial abuse on top of the emotional abuse I'd documented. My parents were arrested 2 weeks later on charges of fraud and abuse of a disabled person. The judge was disgusted by the recordings, especially the parts where they called Peter genetic waste. They both got prison sentences and had to pay back all the money they'd stolen. Peter and I went to live with our grandmother, who actually loved us both equally. Peter is doing amazing now. He's in college studying computer engineering and has a girlfriend who adores him. He still uses his crutches, but he's more confident than ever. Sometimes he thanks me for saving his life, and I know he means it literally. I couldn't imagine losing my brother because our parents couldn't see how incredible he was. We both testified at their sentencing hearing. Peter gave this powerful speech about how their words almost broke him, but he survived because he knew at least one person in his family loved him for who he was. The judge gave them the maximum sentence partially because of that speech. They're still in prison, and honestly, I don't care if I ever see them again.